All right, guys, so the basic premise for doing your shelter is you want to find a place where you've got like some type of depression area. If you have a creek bed or a river bed that's dried up and it's higher off where you can just take and lean them, the more space you get in, the better. But for a shelter purpose, quick, expedient, you want to get out of the elements, you want to get some heat going, you can cut up some branches, drop them down. Once you've got your basic roof line, you can take a emergency blanket, you can take a couple trash bags, you can take a tarp, whatever you want. Get your tarp up and over as much of it as possible. Pull it down to one side so that you're blocking off all air coming in from one side. Okay, so basically what we've done here is we've taken a tarp, we've covered up the shelter. We got Bree back here, or sorry, Brittany. We got Brittany back here covering one side of the tarp with dirt. We're not too concerned about the blue on that side because there's no avenue of egress or degress at this point. So we don't have to worry about our security or our safety from this point in time. It's better if we do. You always want to be concerned with being completely concealed. But in this situation, you know, it is what it is. So Brittany, if you could go ahead and pull that tarp little flat there. There you go. Pull your tarp as tight as possible. Okay. Once you've got it tight, remember guys, we were talking yesterday, you don't just use your paracord, use your individual strands as much as possible. And this is about a 3-foot piece of paracord. That gives us our strand still. I'm gonna let you hold that, Bree. In 7 pieces, so we're gonna use about 2 on each side. You can hold on to that. There we go.
You know, I told him together.
It's my favorite knot. Yeah, my favorite knot is just tie a loop on one side. Just secure it here. It's not going anywhere, or even better, you can actually tie a loop in the next piece. Move it through. Pull it in, and then that's nice and secure. Okay, get the duct tape. Actually, we don't need it on this one, but duct tape, phenomenal stuff. Highly recommend it. Every get home bag needs to have it. Every emergency kit, go bag, whatever you want to call it. Back to home bag is the newest terminology, BTH. So run that through there, through your grommet. Also highly recommend, a lot of people rely on tarps in their get home bags. Highly recommend Walmart, camping store, whatever, automotive stores even, get you a grommet repair kit. Otherwise, once you start wearing that tarp out, there you go, and the grommets start coming out, you're gonna have to start relying more and more on your duct tape. Then tie it off. There's no sense in wasting a whole piece of paracord for that when you can just use one or two of the strands. Save your paracord as much as possible. Okay, once Steve gets that secure, we'll have the first layer of our roof on. After that, we're gonna take, who's got an E-tool on them? Okay, for training purposes, excuse me, young sir. For training purposes, we're gonna do this here, but really it's better to do it off the trail some. You're gonna take your E-tool. You wanna get up underneath. You wanna get up underneath the grass. Too many rocks here. Y'all, whose E-tool is this? Whose E-tool is this green tool?
That's my Walmart.
Yeah, it's might want to get that replaced soon. Brings up a good point, guys. Tools, a good tool will save your life. Quality, good quality. A bad tool will eventually cause it to break, and then you're without that tool. The difference between quality and cheap is typically just a couple bucks. Invest in a good E-tool. I highly recommend Gerber's E-tool. If you're wanting to buy a commercial one, if you want military surplus, that's always best because mil-spec has been put through the ringer. You want to get the grass because it's going to hold the dirt together, but you want to get the dirt underneath because the dirt is your insulator. And basically you just go on the other side of your tarp, start covering up all of your logs from ground level forward, then pat them in. There you go. You know what, let me have that. Your job is to start patting it in when it comes in. We're gonna need quite a bit more. That each will need some work. Get it all the way up in there. Now just start patting all that down, getting it pushed down.
Watch out, thorn in there.
Okay, now I want to start doing this side over here. This side over here. You want to get up in there and fill in those logs first. Does anybody have any questions about what we're doing so far? No? Okay. Remember, it's best to have gloves with you in your get home bag. Anything you can do to protect your hands, you want to be doing, especially when you're in a situation where there isn't a hospital readily available. And it's more than just place them on the logs, you want to pat them down in, because what you want to do is you want that dirt to fill any holes in the gaps. Going from the open holes on top of the tarp, you want to make sure you put it in kind of like an angle where it comes up and presses against everything, okay? Now at this point, hold off on any more, guys. At this point, your shelter, for the most part, with the exception of right here, is going to contain everything. It's going to contain your heat. It's going to keep the rain out. We've got the side on the back, the roof. We've got the edges covered. Once you're ready to vacate this, let's say this is your area for a couple of days where you want to do some hunting, fishing, whatever. Start rebuilding your food resources and purifying water. Come on under there. Okay, so at this point, y'all get the basic idea, right? You got your shelter covered, you got the back covered, you got your edges covered. Once you vacate your shelter and you want to start smoking your meat, whether it's fish or deer, or if you're fortunate enough to find a farmer's cow, whatever, right? You want to make sure that all the rest of this is airtight. So at this point in time, because you're only going to be here a little while, you're not worried about tactical stuff, you're not worried about being seen. Inside, who's got their wire with them?
Open that, it's on top.
Outstanding. Man, that's a great little kit, dude. You put this together yourself? Mm-hmm. Nice. There we go. And you know, the gauge of the wire is up to each person. I would use something a lot heavier gauge. If you know anybody that's an electrician or anybody that's in voice data, audio, video communication network setups type things, get some of their Cat 5 cable from them. Cat 5 cable's phenomenal. You take a little 20-foot piece, coil it up, drop it in the bottom of your pack. It doesn't weigh hardly anything, but inside you have 4 pairs of wire that's about 3 times as thick as this, right? You can always strip that back as you need it. But the basic premise, once you turn your shelter into a smokehouse, the basic premise is to contain all the smoke, because the smoke is what cures your meat, right? So before you finish covering everything, you want to get your meat inside. So you would take your wire, run from one side to the other. You want to keep it elevated off the ground quite a bit. You want this to be as close to the ceiling as possible, so when you lay your meat over the wire, it'll keep the meat up off the ground, okay? So for training purposes, we'd say let's run 3 or 4 across, and then have them set where we can just drape the meat over. It's good to go ahead and get your meat hung. If you've got something thicker than this, go ahead and get your pieces of meat hung. That way you're not actually laying in there while you're draping meat over, okay? You can just get a couple pieces, 3 foot. That's why I like the shelter to be 4 foot wide. Some 3-foot pieces of wire. Get them in there, get them secured, and have your meat hanging on it. Go ahead. You want to get your fire in the deepest part possible, and you want to use as many embers and coals. You don't want an actual flame going with wood burning, right? Your main premise is to smoke your meat. So you'll build your fire somewhere up to here, okay? You'll have your meat all hanging in here. So you'll want to feed in a lot of leaves, stuff, things that are real smoky, because it's the smoke that cures the meat. You don't want to cook the meat, you want to smoke it to preserve it. Once you've got your fire going, you got your meat hung and everything, then you need to close in this side. At this point in time, you're leaving this location tonight. You're not overly concerned about if somebody can see your reflective surface, right? That's when you want to get just a base cover on. This side you're going to secure with some kind of rock or something because you're going to keep lifting it to feed your fire, right? So get this over. Somebody grab some dirt and start piling up across here. We'll grab this. Oh, that's a nice good piece right there. Again, the premise here is to lock in as much stuff as possible. And you could, you're gonna have to come around behind me. You could, if you need to, if you've got the additional resources, and you got an extra tarp or something, and you just want to take a piece of duct tape and tape the two together, you can do that. I'd say keep your duct tape for when your life depends on it, not when you're just feeling lazy. Come right here behind you. Coming around behind you. Step forward. There you go. Get that grass, guys. We're gonna need some more of this. I thought we'd have enough, but.
So you don't want grass across the over the entire thing?
You can, if you're building this as a shelter and you want to be here for several days, you can. We need some more of the sod.
He went to go get it.
Make sure you get this area over here too real well. Okay. Matter of fact, we're going to put some sod over there in a minute. See, now apparently we've got a couple areas where we've torn some holes in the emergency blanket. Who's got the duct tape? You're the star of the class this weekend. Look at you. Outstanding. Nice thing about emergency blankets, emergency sleeping bags, you can always take the holes. Y'all, it is hot.
Yeah.
Whose idea was to do this on this weekend? Train like you live like you train.
Alright.
Nice thing about doing training on a weekend like this is you know that if we do face a society ending event at the end of July, beginning of June, or end of July, beginning of August, you know that you can get home. You know you can deal with the weather. Okay, you want to get this compressed down as much as possible. Brittany, we're going to need to hit this corner a little bit more. Your basic premise is to make as much of it airtight as possible.
How long do you smoke your meat?
Till it's done.
How do you know if it's done?
Thank you.
It's smoked through and through. It depends on the type of meat. Like if you're doing salmon, it depends on the thickness as well. I like to cut my meat for smoking at about between an 1/8 and 1/4 inch. You don't want it overly thick. So once you've got it where you're pretty much, your open areas are covered, you want to leave a little opening you can get into to put fuel, mostly leaves and stuff on your fire. One of the things I want to point out is remember, I know we did this yesterday when we built the shelter, but remember, it's not just about having a place to get out of the elements. It's also about making sure that you're in a secure location, okay? Yesterday when we vacated this area to go back to base camp, we left logs and stuff like that cut up around here. If this is really your shelter location, you want to make sure that anybody that does start to walk down this trail doesn't see any disturbance. Broken branches that have dead leaves on them are perfect, okay? Not live branches, not branches with green leaves on them, okay? Because then it looks like you're replacing stuff. Scatter it around, make sure you clean up your mess where you're cutting up the wood and all that kind of good stuff, and you're good to go. Footprints, you're good to cover. So, folks, that's basically your shelter. You turn your shelter, when you're done, you turn your shelter into a smokehouse, you smoke your meat, you've got good cover. So any of the smoke that does get out is going to get dispersed among the branches. It's like when you're building a fire in the brush. Step back a little bit. Instead of, if I'm worried about a security situation, instead of me building my fire here, I'm going to build my fire up in here, underneath the branches with all the foliage and everything, because this foliage will act to dissipate that smoke, so that we're not looking off. Somebody's not looking off and seeing this huge trail of smoke coming up, right? You should not be at your smokehouse location for more than 18 hours. Okay. You want to get your meat cut in strips that are small enough and thin enough to where, you know, you're talking 6-8 hours max.
Okay.
You know, the premise is you get up in the morning, it's your final day here, you've done your hunting, you've done your fishing, right? It's your final day here. You want to immediately turn that into a smokehouse, get your meat to smoke and get away from the area. Get up in here, because even though you're doing it in an area where most of the smoke's going to be captured in the leaves, you're still going to get some out. So for security, you want to get over here, you want to get up over here where you can keep an eye on it and still feed it, but watch it from a distance so if somebody does stumble across it, you know, they're not stumbling across you. When this is a shelter, when you're up in here, before we converted this into a smokehouse, this was all wide open. When you're up in there, this should be the place that you've got your fire going anyway. Okay. You should have had, if you're here for 2, 3, 4 days, you should have some really good embers already going, some good coals already going, because you've been in there building on this little fire the whole time you're there. That's why you leave a little bit here in your wood exposed, so that your fire has a way for the smoke to go, but you're still trapping in the heat inside the shelter, or as much of it as possible. You need a place where you can log her up for a couple days, gather up some resources, get it prepared to last you 4, 5, 6 days while you're continuing to move, trying to get home. All right, guys, let's wrap it up here then. Grab your emergency blanket and your tarp, get rid of all that, clean up the area, let's make sure we don't leave any trash down here for Jerry to bush hog over later, and let's head back to base camp.